American pressure on Israel, not Israel, while visiting Israel, and unacceptable to Israel, to the land of Israel.
Welcome to Eyes on Israel. I'm Rabbi Pesach Wolicki. If you've been following the news from Israel, you may have heard that the Knesset, Israel's legislature, recently passed the law by an overwhelming majority to ban the Al Jazeera network from broadcasting and operating in Israel. Israeli Communications Minister Shlomo Karhi, who led the effort to pass this bill, cited reports by Israeli intelligence officials that Al Jazeera journalists were revealing locations of IDF forces to Hamas, endangering Israel's national security. The United Nations and the White House immediately condemned the ban, White House spokesperson Karine Jean-Pierre stating that, quote, "We believe in the freedom of the press. It's critically important," end quote. What Karine Jean-Pierre did not address is the fact that Al Jazeera is operated by Qatar, the same regime that funds Hamas, continues to protect and house the Hamas leadership who planned the murder, rape, and hostage-taking of approximately 1,500 Israelis on October 7th, and continues to fund the activities of the Muslim Brotherhood, the parent organization of Hamas, around the world. Put simply, Qatar is Israel's mortal enemy. Qatar's funding of terrorism is no secret, and neither is their extensive funding of academic institutions in the United States. According to a 2022 report by the National Center for Research and Innovation, Qatar is the single biggest donor to American universities. The report further demonstrated that there's a direct correlation between institutions that receive these funds and a significant rise in anti-Semitism on those campuses. So to sum this up, Qatar poured billions of dollars into building and funding Hamas, into spreading hatred for Israel and Jews around the world, and the Biden administration in early 2022 declared Qatar a major non-NATO ally. Considering Qatar's hostility to the state of Israel, it should come as no surprise then that Israel has voiced its opposition to Qatar's involvement in U.S. plans already underway to build a pier off the coast of Gaza. The stated purpose of the pier is to facilitate increased humanitarian aid. I say stated purpose because despite constant claims by world media and the Biden administration to the contrary, there is more than enough humanitarian aid flowing into Gaza daily. According to the UN's World Food Program, Gaza needs 4,000 tons of food per week. From the beginning of the war through the end of March, 250,000 tons of food have been imported into Gaza, roughly 10,000 tons per week, more than twice what is needed according to the UN's own numbers. The real problem with the humanitarian aid flowing into Gaza is that almost all of it is delivered right into the hands of Hamas. And now the U.S. has invited Qatar, Hamas's patron, to operate the pier they're building. To top it off, Qatar has insisted that the contract to build the pier go to Al-Hisi, a construction company closely aligned with Hamas who builds most of their projects. So, if there's really no starvation crisis in Gaza, why are the U.S. and their terror-funding Qatari friends building this port, even though Israel, America's ally, maintains that it would threaten its national security? Joining me now is Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief of Jewish News Syndicate, who has been closely following the current state of the U.S. relationship. Jonathan Tobin, welcome to Eyes on Israel.
Thanks for having me on.
So, you heard my opening. And we're in a very perilous situation here in Israel with the U.S. bringing Qatar into everything, into the hostage negotiations, and now into the pier. What do you make of this push to have Qatar more involved and of the U.S.-Israel relationship as it stands right now?
Well, I think the sort of the pivot to Qatar is part of Biden's efforts to sort of cut Israel down to size. Biden doesn't support the elimination of Israel. He likes to talk about how he loves Israel. He's been a friend of Israel for the last, for his entire 50-year political career. But he has a vision of Israel, which is a sort of a client state of the United States that does what it's told. He loves Israel as long as it's not acting according to its own interests and listening to the voice of its own people as far as its own security is concerned. That's why he is always interested. He, as with the Obama administration. He pursued the appeasement of Iran, rapprochement with Iran, which is obviously linked to Qatar. This is the orientation of his foreign policy team. More than that, right now, he's primarily focused on his efforts to win re-election. And he's losing right now. He's trailing in the polls. He's trailing in all the battleground state polls. He's trailing in Michigan. And because he and his staff live inside a sort of leftist bubble, he's under the impression that the reason he's losing is because left-wing voters are prepared to abandon him. Muslim American voters in Dearborn, Michigan, as the Wall Street Journal said, the jihad capital of America, they're going to abandon him, and that's why he's losing. Now, first, that's wrong. That's not why he's trailing. And of course, we're a long way from November, so anything can happen. He's trailing because working class Americans are defecting from him. Working class people who used to vote for the Democrats. In Michigan, the auto workers and Teamsters who see Biden as part of, failed immigration policies, open borders, failed economic policies, inflation. That's why he's losing. But instead, he's blaming it on Israel. He's blaming it on Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. This is kind of crazy, but also fits in with his orientation towards appeasing Iran and wanting, and it motivates him right now because he's responding to left-wing anger at Israel over the war against Hamas. That's why he wants the war to end. He wants to stop Israel from winning. He wants to let Hamas survive, even though he endorsed the eradication of Hamas at the beginning of the war. He's backed away from it largely for political reasons, because that's what his left-wing base wants. That's the real irritant in U.S.-Israel relations right now. Not whether Benjamin Netanyahu is obnoxious or not whether he and Biden have a bad relationship. This is about American politics. That's why things are in the state they are right now.
So what do you think the motivation behind building this pier is? And from where you sit, what do you see as the danger to Israel if this thing actually gets built and gets functioning?
Well, the pier is part of an effort to prioritize the welfare of Palestinians living in Gaza. That's the big humanitarian issue that the American left believes in. They believe that Israel is killing people indiscriminately. Unfortunately, the recent tragic accident in which some aid workers were killed fits very neatly into that narrative. The idea that Palestinians are starving because of Israel, the idea that Israel is indiscriminately killing Palestinian civilians, even though the statistics that Hamas puts forward are entirely bogus and have been proven to be bogus. That's what the American left believes. So this idea of a pier is a way for Biden to virtue signal his willingness to feed and help the Palestinians. He's doing this pier, and he's claiming that no American boots, will be on the ground. In other words, the Americans will be just offshore. They'll never go ashore, which makes no sense. It sort of enables him to show that he's doing what the left wants, and yet he's not getting America involved in a war in which Americans don't wish to be involved. Americans don't wish to be involved in any wars, and obviously Israel doesn't want Americans involved in it either. But that's why the pier. It's sort of this neat, sort of crazy solution. A Mulberry Harbor, like the Allies had off of Normandy after D-Day, that will feed the Palestinians, curb Israel from killing them. That's where this fits in. It's a terrible idea for all sorts of reasons. You outlined them in your opening. Hamas is obviously involved. Qatar's involvement compromises it right there. And even if Qatar wasn't involved, there's no way that whatever they're bringing in through this port will not wind up in the hands of Hamas. The only solution to getting aid to Palestinians and not having it in Hamas's hands is to get rid of Hamas. That's the only logical conclusion. Let Israel win the war, and then you could deal with the humanitarian problems in Gaza. But because of his political priorities at home, his orientation towards trying to stop Israel from winning and not anger Iran too much, he doesn't want Iran angry. That's why he's seized upon this rather foolish, far-fetched idea, right? The idea that it can be executed without any American casualties and at minimal cost and without Hamas being involved is a complete fantasy. It's magical thinking. But when you're inside that political bubble of the left and worried about American politics more than the reality on the ground in Gaza and Israeli security, that's the kind of magical and foolish idea that you're inclined to accept.
Wow, that's some clarity on this point. Jonathan Tobin, could you please tell our viewers where they could follow your work, where they could find JNS's work, and what exactly you guys are putting out there?
Well, we are a 24/6 news service. We are really a unique. Nobody else is doing what we're doing in English. Providing daily news. You can subscribe. You get twice a day. If you go to our website, www.jns.org, that's jns.org, sign up for our newsletters. You can get twice a day news updates with opinion. We have columnists like Melanie Phillips, Caroline Glick, exclusively with us, myself, my daily columns. Also go to our YouTube channel, JNS TV on YouTube, where we have podcasts by Caroline, The Quad for Israeli Women, my weekly podcast, as well as daily podcasts. You get a whole array of Israel news and opinion, Jewish news and opinion. We cover the Jewish world in a way without the left-wing bias that, frankly, all the other English language Jewish sites and Israel sites do. Go to jns.org and you'll see what I'm talking about.
All right, thank you, Jonathan Tobin, editor-in-chief of jns.org. We'll be right back with more Eyes on Israel right after this.